Okay, members, it's all welcome to the special meeting of Derry City and Strabane District Council to hear about the expansion of London Derry campus of Ulster University. Today we have Stephen Kelly, Chair of McGee Expansion Task Force, Linda McGuinness, Department of Economy, Leo Strawbridge, Department for Economy. Alison here yet? I don't not hear you. Alison not here. Stephen Lindsay. Yeah, so and Stephen Lindsay, McGee Task Force. So these are all very welcome. And then we'll let you take the floor shortly. So John, if you want to do the member attendance and apologies.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, members of the public in the gallery. And Deputy Mayor, just for the record, declaring an interest as I'm a member of the task force on behalf of Council. So to all members of Derry City and Strabane District Council, you're hereby summoned to attend this special meeting of Derry City and Strabane District Council, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically here in the Council Chamber, Monday the 7th of April at 2 o'clock. Alderman Cook. Alderman Guy.
Here, John.
Alderman Hussey.
Apologies.
Alderman Carrigan. Alderman McMorris.
Apologies.
Alderman Middleton.
Here, John, online.
Apologies received from Alderman Montgomery. Alderman Wilkinson.
Online, John.
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah. Thank you. Councillor Jason Barr. Councillor Lillian Barr. Councillor Raymond Barr.
Here, John, online.
Councillor Boggs. Councillor Boyle.
Here.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Cusick. Councillor Deeney.
Apologies, John.
Councillor Devine.
And Shaw Lena, John.
Councillor Donnelly.
And Shaw.
Councillor Alex Duffy.
Fine.
Councillor Sandra Duffy.
Shaw.
Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Fleming. Councillor Gallagher.
And Shaw.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Hart.
Apologies, John.
Councillor Heaney.
Shaw.
Councillor Hutton.
Shaw.
Councillor Jackson.
Shaw.
Councillor Leonard. Councillor Logue.
Online, John.
Councillor McDade. Councillor McGinley. Councillor McHugh. Councillor Mooney. Councillor Murphy. Councillor Norris. Councillor O'Farrell.
Lena, John. And Shaw.
Councillor Riley.
Online, John.
Councillor Tierney. And Councillor Nealis.
Shaw.
Thank you, members.
I would like to remind everyone physically present at this meeting or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to be informed and to use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council privacy notice can be found on the Council website, www.derrystrabane.com. I have no chairperson's business and no one has contacted me with any chairperson's business. So we'll go straight into the presentation, and you're very welcome, Alison. Oh, you're okay. Stephen, are you taking first there? So you want to go ahead there?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Chair, and it's great to be back with councillors today. When we were here in October, I asked that we be invited back once we published our action plan and report, which we did back in December of 2024, and that offer continues beyond today. That as we continue as a task force over the next couple of years, that we do be invited back to give regular updates to council on the progress that's been made to date. I've supplied in advance a copy of the full report, the whole 127 odd pages, but also of some summary slides, which I don't intend to go through every slide today, but I just thought it would be useful just to put those slides in front of councillors and on the record, just so that people see the kind of main headline pieces. And I'll take you through some of those, some of that detail now in a second. Pleased to be joined by some members of the task force and Linda McGuinness, who heads up the task force team for the Department for Economy as well. Next slide, please, Sean. So, next slide, sorry. So just as a reminder that we're all in the one place. So this has come about as a result of the New Decade, New Approach agreement between the British and Irish governments back in January 2020, which formed the basis of the reformation of the executive. And it was a direct commitment to the city and this project there in NDNA. And our role is about delivering on that NDNA agreement that's already been made. So it is about developing Ulster University's campus in Derry to facilitate 10,000 students, including a graduate entry medical school. So we're agreeing what's already been politically agreed. Next slide, please. We were established with the terms of reference. We met for the first time back in April of last year, so just short of a year now. And our role was really to develop and oversee that action plan and to include timescales, budgets, et cetera, in order to facilitate a successful expansion. Next slide, please. The terms of reference looks at what requirements we would have in terms of resources, capital investment, revenue investment, but also means in which to ensure that the student population is attracted to the city. So both actions on behalf of the university, but also the wider city as well, and also how people move in and around the city. Next slide, please. It was about trying to ensure that the expansion of the university aligns with the already established economic plans for the city and region. So it was about playing our part in delivering that wide and expansive economic development plan that the council leads upon. And it's also about trying to ensure that there's delivery. So it's always been the case that lots of plans are written, but very few are delivered upon. So it's about trying to understand what went wrong in the past and to ensure that the systems, processes, people and projects are in place in order to ensure that that delivery is actually seen through. Next slide, please. So in many respects, we're meeting a practical challenge. We aren't a governance body. We don't have the accountability, responsibility. We don't hold the budget. Various other partners do, but we are about bringing all of those people together and trying to meet that practical challenge of building a campus that can accommodate 10,000 students and all the associated requirements in and around that. Next slide, please. As I say, we came before council back in October. We published our interim report in September of last year. In that report, you'll recall there was 27 individual asks of parties involved in the expansion of the university, and we asked them to confirm some of our assumptions and asked them to make particular choices. The asks were responded to in that period over the autumn, and that formed the basis on which we were able to develop out our action plan. Next slide, please. So our report includes an economic assessment that's been done by KPMG in terms of the impact that this will have on the region. It lists out the investments that are required and the infrastructure that's required in order to successfully deliver that 10,000 student target. It has supporting projects in and around the attractiveness of the city and the region, and also has a governance model which ensures that what are enormously complex and interdependent projects actually have a clear line of sight in terms of the governance to ensure that the delivery actually takes place. Next slide, please. So from our report, we list out the requirement in terms of capital expenditure. There's about £260 million in total for the buildings in terms of the student accommodation and other public realm works. There's about £30 million in terms of the project management office, but also PhDs are actually capitalised. They don't come from day-to-day revenue, but are capital money. There's about £52 million of enabling costs, so that's the supporting projects that are in and around, ensuring that there's successful delivery. And there's the investment in the additional student places. So in the year that we're currently in, although the university year straddles across the financial year, it meant that there's about £2.5 million of investment in additional teaching grant for students. And we worked out that across the period out to 2032, 2033, when we expect the 10,000th student to be present on campus, that will be a recurring expenditure of about £35 million at that point in time, and thereafter about £38 million per year. So when you recall that I mentioned that we made a number of asks of various departments, ministers and others, the big choice that was made was this about simply shifting students from Belfast to Ulster University's campus in Derry, or whether this was about adding additional student numbers. So the plan is actually to add those additional student numbers. The ministers made the choice that this is about additionality. It's about being additive to those numbers, and I'll come on and explain why that's important in a second. So that was the first major decision that was making, was these are additional student numbers, and those numbers would be essentially hypothecated to the northwest. Next slide, please. We can probably get into a bit more detail on this as we go through, but I mentioned that KPMG had provided us with a report, and KPMG's analysis is a very strong economic argument for this investment to be made. And it's across the period in time. Essentially what it means is that out to 2032, there'll be about £400 million worth of additional revenue, additional GVA growth in the region. So the money that's required in terms of the capital and the revenue costs for these 10,000 students will be recovered as we continue to build the project out. So this is a net positive impact, not just for the city and the region, but across the north as well. Next slide, please. KPMG's analysis is that it creates about £258 million of annual return on the investment once all those investments have been made. Next slide, please. In addition to that, it will deliver 4,600 new jobs, more than half of which will be here in the Derry City and Strabane District Council area alone. Next slide, please. There's a series of one-off investments, which includes the capital, public realm, and program management office, as I mentioned. In total, there's 18 capital projects. So those are new buildings or refurbishments of existing buildings on site in order to provide the student teaching accommodation plus office, research and other supporting facilities. And then in addition to that, there's that £52 million of investment in enabling. So that's including things like widening the participation of people who are hardest or furthest away from university education. Next slide, please. So in your report, and I'll not go in detail on this, but you can see across each financial year, we line out the capital investment required plus all those enabling costs. And that gets us to our total project cost towards the end of the entire project of about 342 million. Next, please. And in addition to that, we list out what are the 18 capital projects that are required in terms of delivering the facilities that are needed to teach those students. But we also list out, as each one of those projects come online, how many additional students that can be taught in those facilities. Next, please. And this is an updated drawing since those that were able to make the launch back in December. But since we've actually published our action plan, we've had confirmation of a series of capital projects having been successfully secured for this expansion. So in addition to the new builds that are going with City Deal money and other projects, we've managed to secure a pocket of 5 individual sites between Strand Road and Queen's Quay off a local owner. And that will be for the development of a multidisciplinary facility along the quay. And then earlier this year, we announced that alongside the Minister and the University, that we'd managed to secure the Timber Quay offices. So currently, 3 out of the 4 floors of those offices are being refurbed on behalf of the university, so the teaching can take place in that facility come September of this year. The entire School of Engineering and Computing will be moving from the campus to that facility and allowing space to be freed up on the main part of the campus. But the general thrust here is that largely the centre of gravity of the university is moving away from the Northern Road area and down towards the Strand Road, along the river and towards the city centre, which is a really important thing, not just from a regeneration point of view, but also in terms of taking stress off communities that are already feeling stressed by population growth in that particular area along the Northern Road. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, sites have already been secured, and we expect that in the next number of days there should be completion of the final piece of the physical jigsaw that's required, and all the capital sites that we require for this expansion are now in place. Next slide, please. In our report, we do a bit of a timeline about projects that are running and when we expect those to receive, when we expect those to be delivered. The Gantt reflects the beginning and end point of each individual project. Next slide, please. And I mentioned the fact that it's not just about the capital builds, but the need to support the rising student numbers through teaching grants. And I mentioned earlier that totals about £35 million per year come 2032, 2033, and then £38 million per year from that point on. But it's important to note that the figure required for 24-25, that 2.5 million, was secured by the department and delivered to the university. So there was roughly about 500 new students started in September of last year as a result of that. And the money required for the incoming cohort from September of this year is in the departmental budget and will be in place for that additional 500 that will come from September of this year. But it's important to note that until the new teaching facilities are actually developed, then the numbers in the university will be capped at 6,500 until those new teaching facilities are able to be opened. So those new construction projects that are taking place will see that there won't be an additional jump in student numbers for another couple of years to allow those additional infrastructure pieces to be put in place. Next slide, please. So we track all that out in terms of the numbers of students, the additional properties that come online, and when we're likely to see those. So as you can see from that chart, in the 27-28 period, the numbers are peaking at 6,500. And it's not until the latter end of the project, as new capital builds appear, do we see an increase in student numbers again. Next slide, please. So it's important that we have buildings and we have students, of course, but it's actually, well, what are they being taught there? And the university did an incredibly useful piece of work in tracking out to 2032 the types of programs that will be available at Ulster University's campus in Derry. And the commitment was that these would be across all 4 faculties of the university, and they've given us a list of both undergraduate and postgraduate programs that will be taught, some of which are already beginning from the current academic year, but right out to 2032 as well. Next slide, please. So in life and health sciences, it's the full cohort of projects. So it's everything from psychology and sport to criminal psychology, public health and other areas. Next, please. And that continues in our business school, where there's been 6 new pathways in terms of our business studies program, but projects that are relevant for those people who have come to our city and looking to invest. So things like fintech, regtech, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please. In arts and humanities, it's the reintroduction of a number of different programs, some of which had left the city over the last number of years, but are returning. So you have sociology and politics, as well as other areas, including more innovative areas like special effects. Next, please. Peace and conflict studies will be returning. That's already been announced, but there's a whole series of additional programs in this faculty. Next, please. In computing and engineering, it's about looking at what the demand is currently, but also forecasting ahead to where the jobs of the future will be arriving, hopefully into our city. We've already seen some great announcements in the last number of weeks in terms of investors at Ebrington. So in and around that regulatory technology area and other areas are growth markets for the economic development of the region. Next, please. So I mentioned that it's always a frustration, certainly as a citizen of the city, that plans are written but very rarely see the full light of day. So we were determined that we would actually have a whole series of things to ensure that the impact of this actually is felt and that people begin to really understand the importance that the university has, not just for people who traditionally would go to university, but others as well. So we have a process of governance established and in place, and it's been assisted by the Strategic Investment Board in terms of those designs. We have listed out in our full report the dependencies and identified a number of risks. But we've also put in investments there, particularly around widening participation and what we call a community benefit framework, to ensure that the benefit of this university is not just felt by the university and the city, but the people, particularly their neighbours around it. Next, please. And it's also about trying to make it stick. So we have identified a number of areas that we wanted to ensure that what was an agreement between the British and Irish governments became a delivery commitment on behalf of the executive and departments. And we do have that NG&A commitment, which is now a programme for government commitment on behalf of all the executive parties. It's in the draft investment strategy, it's in the Ulster University strategy, it's in the departmental budget, etc., etc., etc. But more important than all of that, we actually have a team of people physically now based. There's an office on campus, and their responsibility is exclusively for the delivery of this project over the next number of years. Next, please. And as we've made clear, we actually believe this can be done as well as must be done. There's been a lot of promises to the city, particularly in and around university education, over more than a generation now. But we've laid out what is a challenging but not ambitious plan. We've laid out the budgets and the timelines required, and we've identified not just the physical infrastructure that's required, but the enabling projects in and around it. Next, please. But core to all of that, and I'll repeat again what I said back here in October, and it's listed large in our reports and it's been strong in all our thinking. The first words I heard about this project when I met with the local community was this needs to work for the university and it needs to work for the community around it. So we've been very clear that we've put an ambitious and invested plan to try to ensure that we weren't just listening, but we were recognising those community concerns, and we have a responsibility, not necessarily for delivering ourselves, but ensuring that those parties that do, council, university, department, infrastructure, PSNI and others, actually step up and fully deliver on the commitments that they've also given alongside this. Next slide, please. So as I said, expansion needs to be successful for the university and its neighbours. Next, please. So in our plan, there is an invitation as well as a commitment, and we've identified the structures and the funding required in order to support that commitment, that this needs to work for everybody involved. But it's more than that. It's actually about not just listening to people, but bringing them in and actually helping jointly manage whatever challenges and issues continue, or whatever challenges and issues need to be actioned upon. So there is a commitment there, and the structures in the university have already begun rolling out some of those structures in terms of having the community's voice at the centre of actually what that development is. Next, please. Next, please. I'll just get through the slides now for you. So from the university's perspective, they are already beginning to implement an engagement strategy, which what they call achieve social license. So what does that mean? That means that people don't just be invited into a room and listened to, but actually they're directly involved in the day-to-day challenges that communities may be facing, so that they actually feel that they have a role in not just identifying, but taking action and holding to account those agencies whose responsibility it is to take action actually takes place. The university are proposing a prospectus, and that's due to be published in the next couple of weeks in terms of purpose-built student accommodation. We recognise that, particularly in the estates off the Northern Road, that community feel that all the burden of accommodation is being borne by them, and that's unfair, and we would agree with that. So the university themselves are bringing forward purpose-built student accommodation projects themselves, but there's also a prospectus there where the university will partner with others to develop those facilities and help manage and run those facilities. Next, please. Derry City Council have a number of commitments, and it's very pleasing to see that the council have adopted, or we've managed to see the council adopt the local development plan strategy, which gives the council more tools in terms of better managing, particularly HMOs, but also as we go forward with applications around purpose-built student accommodation. And again, council have given their commitment to work in hand with the university and other partners to jointly address those concerns. Next, please. So there's a number of things that are coming ahead. The University Community Neighbourhood Forum has been established. I was invited along to one of their meetings back in February. I was going to say February. It was February. It was very well attended. It was clear that people are frustrated with what has been their experience to this point in time. So those forums are already incredibly useful in terms of ensuring that all parties really understand the depth of feeling that people have in those communities. So what's their purpose? It's to ensure that there's no surprises, that people know what's happening, that people have a forum in which to express their concerns and their frustrations, that the university and other partners who are doing developments can come along and tell them what will be happening now and what will be happening next, and that there's a conversation can take place and people can share not just their frustrations, but their ideas in terms of improving the situation. Next, please. This isn't just to benefit the university. There's a community benefit framework alongside to ensure that all communities feel that benefit as the expansion takes place, but also that people have a direct voice in terms of representation through those stakeholder forums, so that the decision makers, the people who are bringing forward the plans, actually have a direct input from the community around the campus. Next, please. And we identify that it's not just the university or the city council have a responsibility here, or the department, in terms of providing the financial resources, but there are other parties involved, whether that's the PSNI, the Department for Infrastructure, or others, that will ensure both successful delivery, but also that those issues that continue to be a frustration for people are actually addressed. Next, please. We have a reputation, sadly, at this point in time, that Derry is actually a commuter campus. The numbers, the traditional model is around 60% of students would stay in and around the university campus. In Derry, it's only around 40%. That's reflecting the lack of availability of purpose-built student accommodation and lack of availability of private sector rental accommodation as well. And students don't use public transport. So when we work with the Students' Union, only 8% of students actually said that they use public transport. So they're using their cars, and where are they parking their cars? They're parking the cars in and around the university campus as well. There's frequent occasions that I visit the campus and I easily get parked in the car park, whereas you struggle to get through the streets in and around. So there's a part of this is about a lack of supply, which is causing a challenge in terms of accommodation, but also a lack of supply of good public transport, that's accessible to people from where they're coming from in terms of accessing the campus. So public transport is as important as parking will be, as important as the right accommodation in the right locations will be as well. Next slide, please. And even just in terms of having a reputation as a commuter campus, we're not maximising the economic development potential for the city centre in terms of using the shops and leisure facilities, etc., etc., etc. So from an accommodation point of view, in terms of supporting what's coming up in September of this year, which is the next peak that we have for the next number of years, the university have identified an additional 150 beds for those additional students that are coming. There's still more beds required for September, and the university are working at pace with a number of different projects, both in terms of accommodation and other areas to try to meet what the demand will be for accommodation come September of this year. And the university themselves have contemporary experience in Belfast and around purpose-built student accommodation, which they're using to inform this developer prospectus that's about to be published in the next number of weeks, and also their own developments that they have planned for Duncragan Road. Next slide, please. The university currently manage 831 units, but they believe with their own projects that could rise to 2,000 units in total. But there's still a gap, and I know not just in terms of this student accommodation issue, but wider housing issues and stresses in the city are frequently debated in this chamber. But in our estimate, there's somewhere in the region of about 3,600 and 5,600 potential units that could be required depending upon the uptake of the number of students for those units. Next slide, please. From our perspective as a task force, there are applications that come before council for consideration. We can't intervene in those, either in support of, and we won't be providing support in terms of applications for either HMOs or others, nor indeed object to them, because we've got the planning authority involved directly on the task force, and we can't be seen to be influencing that legal process, both in terms of potentially positively influencing it or indeed negatively influencing it on behalf of residents who are already feeling under stress in that area. But what we have done is we've quite clearly signalled, and we've made the acquisitions to show that this actually is a project that needs to move towards the river and towards the city centre, and that investments here should be in all parts of the city, including the water side and other parts of the city, and not just the immediate environs around the university itself. Next slide, please. So there's work underway in terms of student housing availability. Some projects have been identified, more to come. There's work there in terms of that community impact, particularly in and around traffic and noise, and integrating students more widely with the community around it. Council and the university are both working on its involvement in that, and also in terms of the planning policies to better manage those applications that come through. Next slide, please. Discussions are ongoing with TransLink. There should be improvements already in place, but we're hoping for more improvements in terms of accessibility and even just visibility of services that are available to the campus. We have some ideas in terms of the incoming cohort from September of next year that we'll be bringing through in terms of different projects as well. And we're also finalising that governance structure as we speak in terms of the successful delivery of the project. Next, please. So, key upcoming events. I've not seen the final departmental budget. I know the executive budget was signed off, the executive signed off its budget last week, but that then drops down into the individual departments themselves. So we expect that to be published in the coming days, maybe a week or two. And it's about ensuring that the commitments that we've been given, and certainly every conversation I've had with the minister and people around the minister, is that all that money that we've been seeking is actually in the budget for 25-26. The next step on from that is that the executive departments will have, for the first time ever, a 3-year rolling budget. The importance of that is that that carries us over not just the remainder of this current executive term, but the beginning of the next executive term. So commitments and investments that will have begun to be made in the current year will have to continue on in the next executive, regardless of who the minister will be. It's to ensure that all those multiple projects that are part of City Deal, as well as the expansion of the university and other projects that the city's involved in, that delivery actually begins in the current period that we're around as a task force. There is a program level business case, so that's one overall program level business case, which will, my simple explanation of it is that instead of doing a business case every single time for every single individual project, the 60 or 70% of that will be covered off in terms of the program level business case. So the final 30 or 40% is just individual to that project, and that should speed up the process in terms of that business case process, which can be torturous to say the least. And we've moved away from just simple interest in terms of purpose-built student accommodation, but moving those into proper applications as well. And there's a number of people who are involved in discussions with developers and others to actually bring those projects forward. Next slide, please. So when all this is delivered, it's not just about changing the face of the city, but actually about changing the fortunes of the city as well. Rightfully, this council has identified that this is the single biggest catalytic project for the rebirth of the Northwest region. And as a task force, we certainly believe that in all our engagements with council, with the business community, with the Western Trust and others, it's clear that this university is currently providing an opportunity. The university is currently providing the people and skills that we need to make this a wealthier place, but also a healthier place. For the first time ever, the Western Trust has a sustainable workforce plan. It's the only trust in Northern Ireland that has a sustainable workforce plan. Why? It's because of the relationship between the trust and the university themselves. So all the nursing requirement has been met, and the requirement in a number of other areas as well. And as those expand, the Western Trust tell us that their future workforce is being secured for itself. Next slide, please. And from our point of view as a task force, we've delivered a plan that is absolutely achievable, a budget, a timeline, identified the individual projects. We've already secured investments in the physical infrastructure to begin teaching students from September this year, plus the pockets of land that are required for developments out to 2032. We have a series of enabling projects alongside all of that, and a focus on ensuring that for the first time that this project's actually delivered, and that we've set a new bar in terms of what the university does for the city and region, and what the economic fortunes of the region are into the future. Thank you, Chair, and apologies I had to rush through that very quickly.
Thank you, Stephen, for that very comprehensive report and the action plan. We'll probably go into questions now. So Rory was first, and then Sandra. Okay.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Stephen for the presentation. And I'd just like to welcome both Stephens, Alison, Linda and Leo on behalf of the SDLP. So it's good that we have a task force. It's good that the task force is populated with a team of highly committed and capable personnel. It's good that we have the department based at McGee, because that makes real sense. It's good that we have the report. It's good that we have the action plan, which is detailed and comprehensive and sets out the pathway to 10,000 students. And realistically, we wouldn't be having this discussion or have this document in front of us if the DUP still had the economy portfolio. So I want to say that. Just special thanks to Conor Murphy. It wouldn't have happened unless he had made this happen. But we have a Northern Ireland executive commitment that this plan was to be produced. It has been produced. It needs delivered, and it needs financed now. In terms of progress to date, there have been some exciting announcements. Site acquisitions along the river, the Airdome funded through SEUPB. We've got the City Deal projects, Medical School, Cadrick, University Square as part of the riverfront redevelopment, the Shared Island money from the Irish government. So there has been progress, and that's undeniable. But I've got three questions. One about finance, one about student accommodation, and one about getting past 10,000 students. So The funding requirement is considerable. I've had a look at the actual report, and between now and 2032, there's a capital funding requirement that is currently unfunded to the tune of £290 million. That needs to come from the executive. In terms of funding student places, that funding requirement is going to rise steadily to an additional 38 million a year. Again, none of this is guaranteed. So in terms of funding, have there been any guarantees from the Minister that the funding in terms of capital and resource is going to be ring-fenced within the departmental budget? Because that would be really, really helpful. It would give us some certainty and clarity as to what's in this report is actually going to happen. In terms of student accommodation, the demand is massive. We've got potentially the need for between 3,600 and 5,600 extra units by 2032. UU have plans to increase supply at Duncragan from around 800 to 2,000 units. That still leaves a massive gap that we think, or we hope, is going to be filled by the private sector in the form of purpose-built student accommodation. It's our view that that's what needs to happen. We want to see student accommodation move along the foil towards the city centre and away from the Northland area. We have representatives here in the gallery from the concerned residents around Magee. We want that to happen as well. So in terms of what is the plan for student accommodation, I know that you had mentioned, Stephen, about UU are going to issue a prospectus. So is there a contingency plan if the market does not react, if the market does not fill that gap? What happens next? And then my final question is about getting beyond 10,000. I think 10,000 is an interim ambition for the people of this city. It's an ambition that we've had for a very long time. And I know that the role and the remit and the responsibility of the task force is they produce a plan that gets us to 10,000. To get beyond 10,000, we need to get there first. So, that's the first step. But have there been any soundings from the Minister or from UU about how we get beyond 10,000 and upwards? But thank you.
Thank you, Roy. We'll go take Sandra as well. Sandra, if you want to Councillor Duffy.
Okay, I actually don't have any questions, so it's fine. I would just like to again welcome the task force to the council chamber for another really exciting update of where things are at. Before I get into just the presentation that you have provided, I want to say I was on the campus of the university twice last week, and I was blown away by the vibrancy of it. You can actually feel a change in the university. One, I was at a conference on, I think it was the Wednesday, and on the Friday, I just called in for a coffee. And as I was passing, went into the coffee shop, and it really a vibrant, loads of students about, everybody sitting about, having a coffee. Felt very student-like that I hadn't experienced from the Magee campus in a very long time. So congratulations, you can actually feel things moving. At the conference that we were at on the Wednesday, I was talking to some of the lecturers who were there, and it was the social work course, and they were talking about how their students have been feeling, the change that they have been feeling, and also parents who are actively, and it is that destination city, that university of choice, all that parents were actively encouraging their young people, their children, to come to Magee, to come to Derry, because of everything that it had to offer. So something is seeping out there and into the ether, where we have students coming from Armagh and Belfast and different places. So well done on that. But in terms of the presentation, I was at the launch of the action plan in December, but even since then, it's good to see how things have been moving. There is lots of challenges contained within it, but they're good challenges to have. We have seen over the past us trying to overcome other issues and other obstacles that seemed unsurmountable, but we feel that in these ones, these are good challenges that we have as a city and district and how we can grow and how we can develop. I know we have since December had a change in minister in the Department for Economy, and we have lost Conor Murphy to the Seanad. But I have to say that Kiva Archibald, as his replacement, has grabbed this by both hands as well, and is very, very much committed to the expansion of the university and the work of the task force. And I know that it is contained within the programme for government. So this is an all of government commitment now at this stage. So it's really good to see the work that is going on. You talk about the economic fortunes of the city and how the university is going to contribute to that. And I mean, in the presentation, you talk of an extra 4,600 jobs coming out of it. So the university being an economic driver. We have seen the commitment from the acquisition of the sites at Timber Quay and Queen's Quay, and I've actually started here to be able to say that all capital sites are acquired now and secured for the expansion is absolutely tremendous work in such a short period of time. So we have to give credit where credit is due. It's absolutely tremendous to see. Around the courses that have been outlined, because that is some of the questions that we have been getting, is around, you know, is there additionality, is there additional courses that are coming, or are we going to be displacing other courses from elsewhere? I actually really welcome the depth and spans of the courses that are coming, and particularly, you know, we do look to the future around RegTech and FinTech and all, but as a city, we do welcome back as well the courses that we felt that we lost in the past, the likes of our peace and conflict studies and politics and history, and things that really did have a meaning to us as a city. So it's really good to see those returning as well as part of the overall expansion. I suppose just to mention the accommodation issue as well, because we know that is probably one of the biggest challenges that we are going to face is, you know, we do want students to come here and live. We do want them to have that full student experience of living around the campus, the nightlife, the cafe culture, everything that comes along with that. So we do want that. So that is going to be a challenge. And you have identified between 3,600 and 5,600 units of accommodation, and that is going to be a challenge. And I know that Grace has sat and met with residents in terms of the residents group that has been set up to look at that. And I do welcome the fact that it is, the whole conversations are talking about moving towards the riverfront and moving towards the city centre. And I think that is only right. As somebody who originally comes from Rosemount, still has family living in the Rosemount area, you see the challenges that they face as a community and the change that community has faced over recent years. So if we can facilitate that and bring in more private sector developers who can facilitate that move towards the city centre and that student life, that has to be welcomed. I wrote down a quote that you had in one of your slides, and this really can change the face and fortunes of this city and its people. And I just want to congratulate you on the work that you have done so far. And I noted at the start of the presentation, you said you will come back, Stephen, with regular updates. So I really look forward to them, because I think this is all moving in the right direction for us as the city and district. We have talked for many, many years around the expansion of the university, the importance that it had to the city and district, emotionally and economically. And I think that we are starting to absolutely see that moving forward. So thank you so much for coming back with the presentation, and I look forward to hearing more. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duffy. And Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for letting me in, and thank you to Stephen and other members of the task force and the Department for Economy for coming in today to give us an update. And because others have said, we know why people have campaigned in this city for decades for university expansion. And it is very positive that we appear to be making growth or progress in that right now. I think, my concern about the growth wouldn't be to do with the task force work or the commitment of the council. It would be to ensure and to make sure that Stormont actually follows through with its side of it in terms of coming up with the funding. And sometimes I'm not sure if they will, but hopefully if we keep the pressure on them, they will be forced to do that. I don't want to be one-sided in my questions, but I do want to follow up with some of the issues around engagement with the local community, because as a councillor in that area, you can understand why this is a very pressing issue. You've been to the meeting yourself recently at McGee. Big turnout and a lot of very serious questions. Obviously, there was frustration, but there was also within that a lot of knowledge about university expansion, about the issues in the area in terms of congestion and the concerns going forward about the residential character, and then the wider issues in the city in terms of our housing scarcity issue, which is not easing. So just on we had a great presentation from members of the concerned residents around McGee last week, calling on the council to immediately adopt the 10% cap on HMOs in the area around McGee. The council's now looking into that to see if we can actually adopt that, if there's any legal obstacle to that. But the planning committee has the ability right now to assess every application that comes in on the basis of whether or not an area is at 10% already, or if it would go over it. So in the document it says that the task force can take a position in that. Now it seems to me that that initially Ulster University was supporting HMOs with letters of support, and we had a look into that, and then with residential calls they actually agreed to stop doing that. So it seems to me that to send a message to developers and management companies who I believe have been actively encouraging property buying in the area around McGee in order to turn the houses either into a HMO or a guest house, I think it would be important for the task force to make clear what they think of that, because there was a narrative being created that people didn't want to live in places like Rosemount, which simply is not true. And I've heard management companies come into committee and actually say things like this. So, but it's also because it's about the task force understanding as well about the housing crisis. Because look, the housing executive has been putting out a call for landlords to basically allow them to rent their properties. They're now going to be buying up some properties. And it seems to me to make sure that we have to address the housing scarcity issue in the city and in the district, and also make sure we provide the accommodation needs that the university is going to have in order to expand. So I think it's important for the task force to basically, in whatever way is the most fitting, the side with the argument around the 10% cap. I think that's crucial, because it is about sending a message about protecting those residential areas. And then the second thing, which is connected to that, is about the building of student accommodation. So I don't think that there's a reason why we can't be talking to Ulster University about finding the money to actually invest themselves in student accommodation in the areas that are most appropriate that have already been mentioned. I don't see why they can't build 4-year student accommodation and see that as something that would actually be beneficial for the university in the long run in terms of the investment getting paid back to the university through rents by students, and taking a long-term view of it, but also then that wouldn't contribute to housing stress in the city, and I think that would be a positive thing. Now that I know that Ulster University, and I think Stephen, that the last time we talked about their finances uses, that's a matter for them, because they spent a lot of money building the new campus in Belfast and had to take out a huge government loan to then make that up. So they've been willing to take out loans in the past for out of necessity. I think that they can look at that again. And I also know a common criticism, which is not the focus of the meeting today, is about the university's own financial investments in the dairy, compared to what others have been willing to put up. So I think that is, you know, if you can share any of your thinking on that, or anybody else, that would be helpful. And then just in terms of the other aspects of the University Community Neighbourhood Forum, I think that's the meeting that happens once a month on a Wednesday. And I think that people see that as a useful meeting. If I'm getting that right, but that was a long-standing meeting that existed before university expansion was announced. But some people have said, even after that big meeting that was held at McGee, we don't know how to go and talk to the task force or to the university. So, because it's not just there's new tenants groups or residents groups that have come into being, and then there's more long-standing ones. So it's just about making sure that that it's obvious where people should go if they want to have a conversation and raise their issues. And then just on the Community Benefit Forum, if you could just outline that a bit more as well in terms of how that's to proceed and who will be able to participate in that, and what's the you know, there's the commitment there for an engagement, but what's that going to look like?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harkin. I'll just do one more, and then we'll go back to all you said last. Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair. And I suppose just very briefly, just to declare an interest as an employee of Ulster University in the Derry campus, but just to take the opportunity to, I have no questions. Rory has asked the questions that our party have, but I actually wanted to come in off the back of what Sandra was saying about the vibrancy and the buzz about the campus. I went to university in Belfast, but we would have went out in Derry and went up onto the campus at times, and it's definitely there's definitely more of a buzz, and even nicer in that weather. It's gorgeous at the minute, like the campus is beautiful. I'm really happy to see about the purpose-built accommodation. Like, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Since I only moved to university to work this year, and I can't believe how many people commute. Do you know? And we need to get people coming here and meeting a nice Derry girl and settling here, or do you know, like we need to be kind of building that. But just whenever we're thinking about parking as well. Like, so it's all great having all these beautiful, brilliant buildings and accommodation and all, but the parking is a nightmare. And you find that, I know in our presentation from the CRAM members, a big part was not just about the people living up around there in the houses of multiple occupancy, but actually parking as well and coming in on campus. But no, I'm always delighted, because I'm always saying, oh, sure, Derry gets nothing. My equivalent works in the Belfast and the Coleraine campus, and anytime we have a meeting, I'm always saying Derry gets nothing. And now the response is, sure, you're getting a nice big swanky building and 10,000 students. So I'm very happy to see it moving along, and I'm really looking forward to it. But thanks for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McDade. Yeah, Richard Nelis.
I'm just coming in quickly just to ask a question on the immediate plans of the university within the next year. I know from attending the university engagement meetings with the community, excuse me, that there has been a lot of concern and worry in and around the 500 that are planned to be coming in within the next education year. So are the task force involved in the immediate plans? You know, are the concerns from the residents groups attending the university meeting, are they coming back to the task force? And if so, like, what are the ways that they are being dealt with? It's just to help alleviate residents in how, you know, obviously you're talking about there's accommodation already earmarked for a certain amount of those students, but for the others, how will the residents find out about these? Are you going back and forward to the task force, with the university, to let them know this, so that that's coming back to the residents as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Stephen, we'll pass over to you now, and then you and your team can answer all those questions. I think everybody's happy enough with that, yeah? Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was the first thing to say, more generally, is that it's really, really important that this council has done what it's done this morning, which is further confirm its commitment and its support for actually the expansion of the university. And why do I say that? I say that because I do this as a volunteer. 92 unpaid days doing this job, and I have a day job. And the day job means that I walk in through the doors of the department and other departments in Belfast and elsewhere. And I hear it coming back because of what's reported in the media and everything else. She's wanted a university, but now she don't want it anymore. But actually, confirmation today, without me asking for it, from right across every party, that actually this is the single most important catalytic project for this region. And that coming across really loud and clear is really, really important, because that gives me the ability to go back and go, your ears might be telling you one thing, but actually the people that are elected by the people have made that commitment loud and clear. So I just wanted to say thanks for that, because that's really important that we challenge that narrative. The second bit of that narrative that I hear is back to Councillor McDade's last comment there about Derry gets nothing, now you're getting stuff. We don't get anything anymore. We have only had very modest financial asks at this point in time. There's no doubt about it, as Councillor Farrell has said. The big financial asks around this project, the big uplift that's required, is in the period ahead. The money that we've needed for 2024-25, the money we need for 25-26 has all been secured. It's all in place. The commitments that were made by Minister Murphy have been carried on by Minister Archibald, and every ask that we've made, financial ask, structural ask, team, people in offices, etc., all those asks have been delivered up to this point, but they're very modest. So whatever problems that there may be in wider budgets around higher or further education, or we're not getting a bypass in some county downtown because that crowd up in the northwest are getting the university, we're not to blame for those pieces. Our asks, and I've been really clear to date, have been incredibly modest, and the big lift is in time to come, which is why in the presentation I made a little earlier, near the end of those, I've said, here are the key moments. Here are the things for you as an elected representative to help us to make sure that what we say needs to happen actually does happen. So to hear that positive endorsement from the council again is critically important, and we can carry that not just as a task force, but I will personally commit that I'll be carrying it back to those people who dare open their mouths and say Derry gets everything and we get nothing, because that's certainly not the case up until this point. Councillor Farrell asked about the finance and about ring fenced. Correct. As we just said, all the money that we need to and we've asked for so far has been delivered. I understand from Linda, and she can confirm when I finish speaking, that the money is ring fenced in the 25-26 budget, which is good. The key to this then is the 3-year budget. So getting the money locked into that 3-year budget and to continue, so that continues across the current executive, is really, really important. And that to me is the single biggest big moment that's in the time ahead, and that's in the current financial year. All that financial planning will be done, and agreement will be sought within the department first, and then with the department and executive colleagues to secure that money in the long term. If the money's not ring fenced, which is one of the reasons why I asked to be invited back every few months, I'll be very quick in telling you all that the money's not been ring fenced, because we've been given a job to do, and if we're being hampered in that process, then we'll be very, very open and honest and say that that's happening. In terms of accommodation, it's the single biggest barrier in many respects to what's going on. It's also the single biggest point of frustration for residents, which has been articulated very strongly to you as elected representatives as well. I have family in that area. In fact, I have family in the audience from that area here today. This is important to us all. It's important to the entire city. There isn't a family in the city that hasn't got somebody in that community already. So this is, and even some representatives in the chamber are living in that community too. So it's really, really important that their voice is not just heard, but actually their messages are carried forward and delivered upon. Past 10,000, we're delivering what's been politically agreed. But we're delivering what's been politically agreed as a new floor rather than a ceiling to the ambitions. And if we give one practical example, if you look at our plan, there's already a memorandum of understanding between Derry City Council and Ulster University on the purchase of Derry City Council's headquarter offices. We do not include that in our plan in terms of additional student numbers, but that project will be proceeding ahead because it's in our plan. So there's scope for further growth beyond the 10,000, just in terms of some of the physical spaces that are available. Councillor Duffy, you said something really important there, which was for me anyway, which was about we want students to come and live and feel part of this community whilst they're studying here. I actually want to extend beyond that. I want them to stay beyond that point as well. If we're to see the real value of the university on the city, we want those people to want to call the city their home beyond this point. That's what happens in other parts of these islands. Happens in Belfast and Liverpool, Manchester, Dublin and elsewhere, where they go, they stay, they get a job, they build a family life, they contribute to the local community as well. So actually the accommodation piece is part of that. And in addition to that, students, once they graduate, they don't necessarily have a family and 2 kids at that point in time. They'll need accommodation, even single bedroom accommodation in the meantime. Councillor Harkin asked about the 10% cap piece. What I said in the presentation is we won't object and we won't support individual applications. We haven't taken a view on whether the cap is something we as a task force should support. So I'll commit that we will discuss that, absolutely. The challenge is that these are legal processes. Our job is to pull together multiple parties and try to ensure that they deliver on our behalf. We will be guided with Council's own guidance in terms of its legal position on that. But as a task force, I'll absolutely commit that we will be raising it as a task force once we get the clarity from Town Clerk and Chief Executive at the meeting. In terms of four-year student accommodation needs, it's the last time I'm going to have to do it again, but that's something for the university to take. But what I would say is that the experience, even more recently in Belfast, is that not every student wants to live in purpose-built student accommodation. Part of the experience of going to university is actually to have the freedom to go out and share different types of accommodation types with different groups of people. The students tell us that themselves. When the Students' Union, as you know, are directly involved in the task force, they tell us that not all their students want to live in these PBSAs. They want the opportunity to go and rent other properties and places and stuff. We can't force them to do that. I don't know what the university's policies are around that. We'll raise it with the Vice-Chancellor, of course we will. But as you've witnessed, and it's been reported on widely recently, the PBSA stuff in Belfast is already oversupplied and beginning to fail in some regards. There's one developer in particular who already has a scheme up and running, has asked for some of that accommodation to be turned into temporary accommodation for other types of stay and not students. I think it's a really good point in terms of how do the community talk to the task force. I've made myself very available. Task force members have made themselves very available. It was an uncomfortable meeting at the university that evening. We were all there. It was physically uncomfortable. We were on the floor and everybody's above us. The light was bad. People were shouting at me. But that's comes with the territory of doing this job. We've recognised that, we've reflected on that after the event. There's been 2 meetings since alongside the university themselves to say this needs to be better. There needs to be a better way of engaging and providing a very accessible door for people to walk through. So we as a task force will be having our own engagement strategy. We haven't had this until this point. We've just accepted invitations from others. But we want to get out there separately from what the university and others are doing. The community benefit framework, I'll come to colleagues and stuff in a second on. The parking issue, Councillor McDade. Yeah, parking is a hugely contentious issue right throughout the city, but particularly in and around there where there where there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of people invited into that area. Parking at the university is free after 5 o'clock and it's cheap up until that point in time, but people still don't choose to use it. There are times where it is overflowing. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. When it comes to the bigger builds, there is, in planning policies, there are parking requirements. When it comes to purposeful student accommodation, they're not. So that's something for the council themselves to consider as part of their own thinking around planning applications that come before them. But there is a requirement for when the new student builds are made, that there is a requirement there for parking for both staff and students as part of that piece. And then Councillor McNeilis, yeah, I mean, I've already said there that there is direct feedback in terms of those engagement that comes back to us as a task force, so those community engagement pieces, but it needs to be better. We've recognised that from particularly from that experience back in February. We have a plan, and Linda may talk about this in a second, around ensuring that communication flows both directions and not just in one direction. So people think that we've said things, but people just aren't listening. We want to make sure that people understand that they are being listened to and not just heard. At that point in time, the 500 more that will be arriving in September, that is around, so we've already said in the presentation, they've secured 150 additional accommodation units so far. That's short of what's needed. We're in April. It's required for September. So the university are rolling out a series of other things, which will be very visible to people in the next number of weeks and months ahead, in terms of securing additional accommodation for those, for some of those 500 that are coming. As I said, about 40% stay in and around the campus. So 40% of 500's 200 odd. That's 200. So we're at least 50 short in terms of that piece for September. We would need more than that in order to meet the demand that currently exists. I'll maybe pass from this direction and finish in that direction, if that's okay, Alison. Start with Stephen, just if there's any other additional stuff they can pick up from there, Stephen.
Thanks, Stephen. Just very quickly, so I'm on the task force as the Chamber of Commerce representative, so I'm Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce. And whilst there are significant challenges and issues around all this, don't want to lose sight of the massive opportunity it all presents as well. So the figures being bandied around are additional GVA of 250 million, economic output, additional 440 million, 4,600 jobs. So for that to be realised, we have to become a destination city and a destination campus. We have to promote business and try and push that through and link that to the university. That's where whilst we have balanced campus growth, absolutely across all faculties, you know, the impact with this could be a game changer if it changes the dynamic and we're able to create good jobs for people who live in this area and keep people in this area. So we shouldn't lose sight of the opportunity. The immediate challenge is the accommodation piece. That has to be planned. It has to be done in a measured way. And ideally, yes, the university would provide a lot of that accommodation, but as Stephen said, there's maybe financial reasons why the university can't do that. So someone asked, I think it was Councillor Farrell, what's plan B if it doesn't work? Well, plan B has to be a bit of innovative thinking about repurposing existing premises and the accommodation that aren't in use. It has to be about, if there's a failure there in the market, about creating an intervention that bridges that market failure. And the example I'll give you is the Inner City Trust created 40 units in a magazine street in the city centre for graduates who are going to the graduate entry medical school and other postgraduate students. So there are other ways to address this, but you know, I personally in the Chamber, we're fully behind this. We want to do it in a responsible way. We want to encourage the private sector to step up, but there may need to be, we've got a private sector here that's probably not as strong as it is elsewhere. So we need to find ways of doing that in a planned way. and trying to encourage business to step up, because that's how we're going to realise the true economic benefits of all this for everyone, and that's where we're committed. So just to say that.
Thanks, Stephen. I think John, from the task force and council perspective next.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Chair. Just picking up on two of the points there, from the accommodation PBSA side of things. Obviously, members will be aware, it's public knowledge that there is one live planning application on at the minute for a site in Strand Road for a facility that will be over 300 beds. So that's working its way through the process at the moment. The plans for the land on Strand Road, Queen's Quay, both the private sector acquired lands and the soon to be public sector acquired lands from council, also have part plans on it for PBSA student accommodation. So the desire of council, and indeed the desire of all, to see PBSA accommodation down towards the riverfront and up towards the city centre is beginning. The issue will be the timing of that, the speed of that. But certainly, unlike other cities on the island, the lands exist down towards the city and down towards the city centre. I think the challenge that other cities face across the island of Ireland in particular is that the land don't exist. The price of land is considerable, or the sites are in demand for other more commercial uses. So there's certainly the case that both in terms of council's own planning framework, the availability of lands, and the strategic direction of council and its key partners, including Ulster University, are all aligned. So a plan B will hopefully not be required, but as Stephen has said, plan B opportunities are also being discussed through the task force, and indeed can be supported by other policies of council. Picking up on the other issue, the parking, the Councillor McDade has issued is a big issue for the residents, but is also becoming an increasingly broader issue for the city and district, and that has been discussed in this council chamber through a number of recent meetings. The key update on that, as Karen Phillips and myself advised at a most recent committee meeting, is that DFI are engaged in a very detailed and full and thorough analysis of parking across the city and district. We have met with them recently, very, very long, detailed meeting to go through all of the analysis of what they're trying to pick up. We have been conveying to them the very considerable concerns of residents, the growth objectives of the university, the growth plans through City Deal, the pressure it will put on existing car parks, some of which will no longer be car parks as these developments progress, and the absolute necessity to have not just a parking plan, but also a public transport plan that goes in parallel with this. So our colleagues in DFI are acutely aware of the direction of travel. They're also acutely aware of some of the current and immediate concerns and around the campus area. We have invited them in to a future governance and strategic planning committee just to give members an update on progress with respect to that work. And I think that in tandem with this will probably be a fairly regular periodic update in terms of progress, seeking members' input into that process as it progresses. So all the component parts are moving. The question is just trying to make sure that they all move in the same direction at the same time and are coordinated. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, John. Alison, if you maybe pick up on those community elements that we were asked about.
Yeah, certainly. My name's Alison Wallace. I'm the community representative on the task force. I suppose for myself and the task force, it's really important that the community and the local neighbourhood voices are heard at all levels in terms of the decision making going forward in terms of McGee. So if it isn't obvious how you engage with us and engage with the university, I will take on to address that with the chair of the forum that I'm currently working with in terms of the community benefit framework. So it is in terms of the community framework, we have met, a small group has met now for 3 or 4 times to draft the community benefit framework, which includes representatives from the local area. So it is so we're hoping to go out to consultation on that now in May, and we will make sure that consultation process includes coming to the neighbourhood forum with that, so you can look at it and obviously add to it or comment on it in whatever way. And we're hoping to publish that at the end of June. In terms of the makeup going forward of the stakeholder forum, they're talking about at this stage, this is obviously going out for consultation, is 12 members, with 4 of those being from the local community. But that is open for discussion. But we will certainly come back to the community forum with the community framework statement before it goes out and before it is launched in June.
And Linda, can I pick up some of those things?
The finance.
Issue around the finance piece,
No
please.
problem at all. Good afternoon, members. Thank you very much for inviting us along this afternoon. I suppose just setting out initially, the Minister, I think nobody could sort of say that there is no investment in dairy. I think if you look along the quay, there is just over £1 billion worth of investment promised to the city through the Department of Economy in the next 6 to 7 years. So, and I just want to highlight, I suppose that, I mean, Stephen talked about transforming the city. I think this is game changing. And I have been the soldier that has lived in this city, studied in this city and worked in this city for the last 30 odd years, where we have talked about increasing students to 10,000. And I really do think that I have never seen the commitment and the drive, certainly across government and certainly across the task force locally, to drive that at the moment. I do want to look back in terms of the commitment, because we have had Conor Murphy, who obviously set up the task force last April time, and obviously we've had a change of minister. What I will say is that it's been unequivocally not changing any sort of direction, and in fact we are very challenged, as is all government departments at the moment, around our budgets in the current financial year. And whilst the executive has published their budget this year, we still obviously are working through our budget. But what I will say to you is all of the commitment and the monies required for the expansion of McGee have been protected by the university, as must happen and must be seen to be doing. I will say in the last year, the Minister has committed just under £21.5 million towards acquiring the sites that we have across the city. And those are key sites. They are the key sites that are available. There was quite an extensive exercise undertaken by the university in terms of identifying those and also complementing the work that's been done with not just City Deal, but also plans the council are doing under things like the local economic partnership. So there is extensive investment plan for the city, and that is not changing. There was a discussion around what is happening. This is a programme for government proposal. It's in the investment strategy for Northern Ireland. It has been reinforced a few weeks ago with the launch of the programme for government as a commitment across government. And indeed, to take forward all of that, there will need to be cross agreement on that. We are moving into a 3-year budget situation, and we will be budgeting for the next 3 years requirements. Some of the other things, just to sort of say, this year, the Minister has committed to 500 additional places on McGee. And I'm not speaking out of school, but we are ahead of target in terms of the numbers that have been shared, what we have planned in our plan, because of the drive and the commitment by our Minister. This is this is driven monthly by monthly from our Minister to deliver this actually on the ground. So there's been 500 additional places funded through GEM. There's been a new interest-free loan that's been promised to additional students that have been a challenge, and obviously challenging AHI places and that in the city. And there's been extensive other things like marketing campaigns. So we have spent an awful lot last year in the initial inception of the task force with investment in marketing. And I have to say, the University of Ulster have been an exceptional partner under Paul Bartholomew's leadership, driving forward that expansion. And what I will say to you is the numbers at McGee are up this year at over 20% on what they were in the previous year. So the interventions and the push and the things that we are doing are working to drive forward the numbers that we have. In terms of some of the other things, just to sort of highlight, pick up on, it's not just about capital builds and it's not just about student numbers. There is a commitment required of £38 million. It's in our profile for expenditure for the next 6 years, but certainly in the negotiations in the next 3 years, it'll be in the budget, and those costs have been articulated and laid out in the report. But there is other things that we think are important that the Minister has also asked us to take forward. We are going to be working, and we're working with City Council partners, and we're working with Tourism Northern Ireland, and we're working with the university on an extensive marketing campaign that's going to run. The money is, there's £800,000 in that, for example, this year. that is committed. The Minister remains committed and steadfast to that commitment. And that's about growing. Stephen talked earlier, Stephen Lindsay, that is, talked about growing a city destination in a city area. So the money that we would be putting forward from the department would be complementing that. There is some elements of private sector, and we talked about, you know, work, place to work, to be play, work and stay, but we're more interested now in the stay bit. How do we make people stay and stick? Because whilst it's great to get students here, we want to keep them to employed in our businesses, to set up their own businesses, and that in the region. And the Minister's invested quite heavily in initiatives around that. And we're working with the Chamber of Commerce, Invest ANI, and other business bodies across the city to do that. We talked about widening access participation, and Alison's very heavily involved in that from the community sector provide. Around the city, we have some of the highest levels of deprivation, and the Minister's very, very key that those are areas that we need to support and drive forward the university in our steps. So the growth of the 10,000 is not just about driving numbers for the sake of numbers. It's about trying to address some of the social challenges that we have in the city. And the final piece of work is around the instruments, financial instruments. We are looking at how do we make the Magee campus a more attractive campus, and we are doing some more research at the moment, actually with one of the universities in Belfast, the teaching universities, around some research around what other tools and financial instruments can we use to drive the attractiveness of the campus and that on site. In terms of a couple of other points just to pick up, we talked about the community engagement. Stephen, you asked me to pick up on it. I think in terms of the Minister's very, very tuned in and very alight to the issues that are happening around the community, and is very, very keen that those are addressed. And the Minister has asked for some investment to be put on the ground. So we will have bits on the ground that are not just about listening to those things, but actually working with the key stakeholders and taking those forward. And we are working with the SIB to do that at the moment. And I suppose the final thing you asked me about Plan B for the student accommodation. It would be absolutely brilliant if the private sector could come forward under the regulations of the planning authority and be able to build those. That is the ideal scenario. But our Minister's also instructed us to look at what is the Plan B if those things don't materialise. And there is a number of options. There's a number of organisations we can work with. Those will cost more money. Those will have to be costed out. But we've already commenced that piece of work as well. So just to sort of say, and look, I know you've covered most of the other things, but happy to take any questions on that as well. Thank you.
Just one final comment, just for a point of clarity. So the 20% number that Linda mentioned, Ulster University is the UK and Ireland University of the Year this year. They've spent, that in itself becomes attractive. They've spent money on its own marketing also. We understand that applications to Ulster University as a whole are up about 15% in terms of the forthcoming academic year, but numbers for Magee are up more than 20%. So not only is Ulster University more attractive, but the Magee campus is even more attractive again as part of that. Now, that's applications, it's not students. To turn those applications to students, we need to sort the accommodation piece. And the university have been really clear with us that that's the big challenge. So there's a demographic uplift, so there's more university-age students out until 2029. That's been met by an increased attractiveness in terms of Ulster University, and again, an increased attractiveness for Magee in particular. But the barrier is that university accommodation piece, because the university's model is that all freshers, all first years, and all graduate entry medical school will be able to stay in university-run student accommodation. So those two things need to align as quickly as we possibly can. Thanks, Chair. I think there was more.
Commissioner Boyd, you want to come in there?
I'll try and be as brief as I possibly can, Deputy Mayor, because that was an awful lot of chat, an awful lot of answers to quite a few questions. Look, just to say, again, do appreciate Stephen, Alison, Linda, thank you all for coming in today on behalf of the SDLP. I am pleased to see that this is the level of communication that is being delivered, because actually probably key to all of this is communication. It's about telling the community what it is that the plan is. Now, that has to continue. That absolutely must continue. I'm probably going to give my age away a wee bit here, but I was actually a babe in arms when there was a cavalcade that went up the Stormont. following the Lockwood report. So you can all do the maths there. You can figure that out for yourselves. And I genuinely don't want us to have to do another cavalcade. And, you know, I just genuinely think we hear the numbers and we're hearing the figures. I don't want it to be mom and apple pie. You know, it's got to be delivered. It's got to be the real thing, the real deal. And I'm not a skeptic. It's not in my nature. But again, I am one of those people who does do wait and see. So I'll take all of you at your word. I appreciate the effort, the time, and all of it that everybody's put in. But I think it's very important too, also for the local people to be part of the programme, part of how it is that we develop our university campus. Not only am I of the Lockwood generation, I also subsequently went to the Ulster University. It was actually called the New University of Ulster when I registered to go there. They changed the name then to University of Ulster, and they've changed the name again, and that's all grand and good. But I couldn't study here at home in this city. The McGee campus at that time was minuscule, in truth, and certainly didn't offer the courses that I wanted to study. So I welcome all of this. It's important that we give our young people the opportunity to grow and prosper and stay here and grow their families and build the businesses that you're talking about, Linda, as well, all of that. And it's very evident to all of us as well, and anybody who's ever spent any time in and around a university city will know just how important university campuses are and can be. Galway's a perfectly good example of the kind of university city that we can be. And again, on the Western Seaboard. And who would have believed it, you know, in the 1980s that Galway could expand their campus to the extent that they have, and all of the businesses that then flowed in from that. It's a perfectly good example of how our city and district can be and the opportunities that will come with it. There was one final thing I wanted to say, actually, Stephen in particular. I think we're all invested in that community in and around the university. Derry's not a big place, so, you know, and my people are from up the Park Avenue direction, and I'm sure we could all probably point in directions of, it's not a big place, you know, so we're all invested in it. I think, in truth, the reality of where we want to try and push this is, yes, we probably do need to be pushing the campus down along the riverfront, and the chief executive is quite correct as well. There's a significant amount of brownfield sites that I think are and should be available as well. It's not for me to dictate if and where and how that all happens. I'm actually a member of our council's planning committee, but I'm fairly sure that, you know, we'll all be as best predisposed as we possibly can be, without prejudice, to see significant expansion along that particular swathe of land. And the city deal element of all of that, of course, as well, is going to be very important. So I suppose, just to conclude, there's a lot of big figures there, and it's really about how that gets delivered now over the next while. And I accept that there's a 3-year programme perhaps coming our way. We'd like to hear more about that. And can I also, Stephen, say thank you very much for saying that you want to and will continue to engage with this chamber, and also, again, personally to you as well. You have volunteered to do this, and I think that has to be noted and that has to be appreciated as well. And you're a local man, so I think you understand where I'm coming from and where all the rest of us are coming from too. And yes, of course, Linda, you spent plenty of time here, and Alison, you're a local girl too, but anyway, and Stephen, obviously. We all get it, and I just want us all to be on the same page and make it work. That's the most important thing. And let's not do another cavalcade. I don't want to be in another one. Thank you.
Chair, if I could just respond to that. Yeah, everybody involved in the task force is a volunteer, and they're doing it for just the reasons that you've said there. And they're doing it with no need to persuade them to do it. Everybody recognises this is the single biggest, most important project that we do for this region. And it's why we insisted we're not paid. Because if you need to get paid to do it, then is it worth your while doing it? And it also means, to your earlier point about being a skeptic, I'm a skeptic as well, Councillor Boyle. No, sorry, you talked about being skeptical in terms of delivery and the need for cavalcades. The fourth last slide that we presented, those are your cues as a council to say, okay, they told us this next big moment is this 3-year budget. Let's bring them in and talk to them. Is it in the 3-year budget, and confirm if it is or not? I'll be very open in letting you know at that point in time. But that's the next big moment.
Hey, Rory?
Thank you, Chair. I know I've spoken already, but I do want to make a proposal on behalf of the SDLP. I've said it to Paula already. Partly is to give Stephen cover when people say that the local council don't support this plan, they don't endorse it. So we want to say that we publicly welcome the publication of this report and action plan from the McGee Task Force, and that we endorse its contents. The second aspect is that we'll write to the Economy Minister asking that all capital and revenue proposals are ring-fenced in future departmental budgets. Our worry is that we've got a very detailed plan with detailed costings. If those are not financed in future, this is not going to happen at the speed, pace or scale that we need it to happen. So we think we should write to the Minister to let him know, or let her know, sorry, that we support this plan and that we want to see the funding aspect ring-fenced in future budgets. But I do appreciate Linda's update, but I am looking at future years here where the costs really start to ramp up. So I would ask that members across the chamber support the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, John, Councillor Boyle has seconded already, so if there's a proposal on Councillor Duffy.
Chair, I would just like to say, I don't actually feel that we need a proposal to say this. I think that we have all been pretty clear across the chamber around our support. I think that Linda has given a really clear outline of the department's commitment and the work that's ongoing. But I would also like to say that we have a pretty empty chamber here at the minute. So if there is a proposal coming, I would suggest there's still time for a motion to full council.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Any further speakers on the proposal? Yeah, and John, go ahead. Okay, Councillor Farrell, thank you for the proposal. Taking into consideration what Councillor Duffy has said and the fact that there isn't too many, whether it be in the chamber or online, would you like to bring it to full council?
Chair, are you not accepting this? I'm not going to lose the role stuff.
Do you want like?
I don't mind proposing it at full council. Equally, I don't think there's an issue proposing it here today, but it's your discretion, Chair.
I think that the discussion has been fully here today anyway, and I don't think we've left anything unsaid. I would be happy enough to take it today. Yeah. You'd like to speak, Councillor Boyd?
Thank you, Chair. Look here, I respect that decision. That's fine. However, we put the proposal forward, and if there's empty chairs all around us, that's not really our fault. It's for those who didn't attend today. Very important presentation and a very important meeting for the people of our city and district. We're here. We put forward that proposal. We'll bring it back to the Mayor's office again. However, I think it's important that we point that out. If you're not here, it's because you decided not to be here. The SDLP are here. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, Councillor Donnelly here. There's people listening intently online too, and I think some of the last statements is just very dismissive of people who are online listening and watching.
Chair, I'd like to concur with them remarks too. Like, it's very disappointing that we're offered a service to be online, and Councillor Boyle is just dismissing it.
Sorry, Chair, just to be clear, I was including the people who were online. If they're online, they're here. If they're not online, they're not here. Same as if you're not sitting in these seats, you're not here.
Chair, could you just clarify, did you say you would defer the motion or take it? I thought you had said you would take it.
Yeah, no, I changed my mind to taking it because I think that the fact that we have discussed this today, that there is no point in really bringing it in the chamber to go over everything we have today. I think we've been pretty thorough. I think it's a basic enough ask what the proposal is, so I'm happy to accept it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And just to speak on the proposal, look, I'm going to support the proposal. I do welcome the presentation and the update and the progress that's been made. I know that there's issues in there, very serious issues about accommodation that are not resolved. So this is done on the basis that there is work being done to progress that. And I think we all know what that is and what the concerns are. So I think that, like, you know, it's important that we acknowledge the work that's happening, and also to make sure that we are saying to the executive and the minister, and really this is a cross-cutting issue in my opinion, that we want to make sure that the funding into the future is also guaranteed. And if this motion helps to do that, happy to send that motion message, and I think it's an important message to send as well. Thank you.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair. And in terms of the proposal, look, we're happy to support it today, but I do think that there was no need for a proposal. We have very clearly heard the work of the task force. We have very clearly heard from the Chamber in terms of our support for the work of the task force, our support for the expansion of the university. We have heard from London the commitment from the Department for Economy and that it's in the programme for government. But if the SDLP want to play politics at this meeting and try to grab a headline, that's up to them, because I know the work that's going on. Aye, right.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. So we have a proposal there. Is it unanimous? There's no.
Can I come on, Chair?
Councillor Gallagher, go ahead there online.
I was on the chat line. And like some others, I'm happy to support this. And I think this is asking to write a letter. This council has written far worse letters in the past, so I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. I don't see anybody else looking to speak in the chamber or online. So I would take it it's unanimous. Yeah. No dissenting voices. Okay. So the proposal passes. Thank you, Councillor Farrell. I would just like to finish things up by saying, obviously, Councillor Duffy mentioned earlier in her address where she said that it was good to see things moving quickly, and it is. However, I have to agree with Councillor Boyle that he is testament to the fact that things haven't moved quickly in the past, when I was talking about cavalcades and so on. So it is good. I'll go back to what Councillor Farrell says at the very start, whenever he said about it's good to see that the minister has taken this upon himself, because we know past ministers haven't. And I think it goes beyond politics when we just want to see McGee work for everyone, for students, for the betterment of the city, and obviously taking into residents' concerns as well. It's good to hear that the task force will listen to all that you have to say. And I just would like to finish up by thanking Stephen for the actual report and action plan today, and also to Linda, Alison, Stephen, and Leo. Got away handy sitting over there in the corner. But thank you all for coming in, and very much appreciated. Okay, folks, that's it.